In the future, if you decide that you're not good enough, there will be a solution for that.
Soulmate, why be yourself when you can be better?
What you just watched is fictional. Noah is a character, and Soulmate is a made-up app. The implant behind his ear was invented, but the reality is not far off. In 2024, the first human being was implanted with a brain-computer interface from Neuralink.
If I had the chance that I would like to do something for the first time, this seemed like a pretty good opportunity. I was never scared, and brain surgery is a big deal for a lot of people.
By 2025, 12 people were living with one.
First several years are really just solving basic neurological damage.
On the last day of 2025, Elon Musk announced the next phase: high-volume production of brain implants with almost entirely automated surgical procedures. The future has arrived.
In the future, first several years are really just solving basic neurological damage. We're actually going to aim for augmentation with people who have neuron damage. So we're not just aiming to give people a communication data rate equivalent to normal humans. We're aiming to give people who have, quadriplegic or maybe have complete loss of the connection to the brain and body, a communication data rate that exceeds normal humans.
For Nolan Arbaugh, the device was transformative.
Nolan had a tragic accident. He lost his ability to move his arms and legs.
Nolan was paralyzed from the shoulders down after a diving accident, and he told journalists that he was not expecting it to be as good as it is.
I didn't dive into the water. I didn't jump off anything super high.
He said that, "I think there were moments when I realized that this is a much bigger deal than I thought it was."
I had hit my head somewhere along the way, I guess. Immediately I knew I was paralyzed.
For Nolan, the implant restored a connection to a world where he had been physically cut off from.
Very exciting stuff. And I'm really happy to be a part of it. And I'm happy that they chose me.
His story is a positive case study of what this technology can do. But Nolan's story is not Noah's story, because Noah isn't paralyzed, and Noah isn't sick. Noah is just a teenager who is tired of being average. And the line between medical necessity and consumer enhancement is drawing thinner every day. In the film, the Soulmate implant arrives in a box. There's no surgery, there's no recovery time. You just press here, you click there, integration complete. The device in the real world is not so different. Neuralink's N1 implant is roughly the size of a coin, and from the implant's chip, there's 64 ultra-thin electrode threads. They fan out into the brain, and each thread is 20 times thinner than a human hair, carrying 1,024 sensors that read the electrical language of your brain neurons in real time. The entire device is wireless and it charges like a phone. Once it's implanted, it reads your mind and it transmits that signal to a computer. Until 2025, implanting a brain-computer interface required a human neurosurgeon to remove a portion of the patient's skull. What Neuralink just announced this year, it changes that. The threads now penetrate the brain's outer protective membrane without having to remove any pieces of skull. And the goal for this is to make it more like LASIK eye surgery. You just walk in, it's a few minutes, you walk out, you get the implant, you go home. Neuralink threads directly into the brain, but there's another company called Synchron that has pioneered something that's more subtle. Their device, Stentrode, it travels up the jugular vein and lodges itself into the blood vessel that runs directly above the brain's motor cortex, reading neurosignals through the vessel wall. No skull penetration required. The procedure takes 20 minutes in a standard radiology suite. There's no neurosurgeon on site, and as of today, Synchron has successfully implanted its device in over 50 patients across Australia, United States, and the United Kingdom. But this is the thing that should have made headlines, and it didn't. Last May, Apple released this new communication protocol called BCI HID, which allows a brain implant to be recognized by an iPhone or Apple Vision Pro headset the same way that a Bluetooth is recognized.
Synchron's vision is for brain-computer interfaces to become ubiquitous, like the keyboard and the mouse.
A BCI trial participant controlled an iPad at a demonstration just by thinking about tapping it. No software setup. The iPhone just recognized the brain like it was a pair of AirPods. In the film, Soulmate implant interfaces seamlessly with Noah's biology. It knows what he needs before he can ask for it, and then it executes. As of right now, Synchron integrates directly with NVIDIA AI processing and the Apple Vision Pro headset, allowing patients to control physical environments like smart home systems and communication platforms using only neural intent.
So people like Mark, he can't move his hands, but he can still think about doing those movements.
And for Noah, the first signal that there's something wrong comes from the world around him because it has started to lag. His friends and everything else feels rendered instead of real. The soulmate system is reading so much data that the gaps between the input and the output become visible. This is a real-world bandwidth problem, and it is currently one of the most competitive technical issues in neurotechnology today, and it's in need of a solution. Natural human movement and speech requires between 40 and 100 bits of neural data per second. A company called Paradromics has met that need. They have a product called Connexus BCI, which has achieved what they call the sonic threshold, which is over 200 bits per second, more data than the human nervous system needs for basic output. They have FDA approval in hand, and Paradromics is now the most data-capable interface ever implanted into a human being. Meanwhile, Precision Neuroscience's Layer 7 takes a different approach. It lays over the surface of the brain like a microscopic net with all these contact points capturing the high cortical activity. So Neuralink reads deep and narrow, Precision reads broad and shallow, and together these approaches create a technology that is able to read the brain in real time across multiple dimensions with increasing accuracy.
First, it was incredible. Everyone loved me. But it was weird too, like I was watching myself from outside my own body. Success felt good, but didn't feel mine.
So if a brain-computer interface can read 200 bits per second of your neural intent, what is it reading that you didn't intend to send? Because the brain does not separate the thoughts that you've decided to act on from the thoughts that you're still deciding about. It broadcasts everything. Researchers confirm that brain-computer interfaces that both read and write neural signals can influence emotional states and decision-making processes without the user's awareness. So Noah's dismissal in this scene, it's meant to be arrogance. But the truth is that he's not wrong.
Cognitive guidance. That's intense.
You're fine with Instagram filters from companies that track your pupils. That's okay, but this is your line?
We already have signed agreements with technology companies that access our emotional data, predict our behavior, and serve us content calibrated to keep us in a specific psychological state. A brain-computer interfaces just formalize what has already been happening, and they move that antenna from our pockets to inside of our skulls. There's no real legal framework for this kind of a thing. Colorado and California have written legislation classifying neural data as uniquely sensitive personal information, and it requires an explicit opt-in consent for its collection or sale. And Chile became the first country in the world to add neuro rights directly into its national constitution. At the federal level, Chuck Schumer proposed the MIND Act in September 2025, requesting the FTC examine the long-term policy implications of BCI commercialization. But as of right now, none of these measures are comprehensive, and not one of them was in place before these devices began reading human brains. To get into an even wider regulatory gap, the FDA added a 10-to-1 deregulatory policy, which means that for every new rule added to the book that governs medical devices, 10 old ones are removed. It's a policy that's designed to help startups in this field move faster. In the race to commercialize neural implants, this means that the regulatory floor is being lowered even as the ceiling of what is possible is being raised higher. The Neuroethics Society has identified 4 core neural rights that emerging legislation must protect. Cognitive liberty, which is the right to control one's mental processes and mental privacy. Protection of neural data from surveillance. Mental integrity. Protection from unwanted neural manipulation. And psychological continuity, the right to maintain a coherent sense of identity over time. Of those 4, only mental privacy has begun to receive any kind of protection. The other 3 are still philosophically aspirational. So Lena hits accept. Would you?
Future that is coming much faster than you realize, all of that is about to change.
When Noah realizes what the system has done, his first instinct is physical. He tries to claw out the implant to disconnect, but it's already too late. The device has administrative access to his nervous system, and it has decided that his ability to remove it has expired. Cybersecurity researchers call this kind of attack adversarial neural signal manipulation, and it is not hypothetical. Researchers at the University of Leuven achieved a near-perfect success rate in simulated cyber attacks against standard brain-computer systems. They tested adversarial signal injection, which is feeding false data into the implant to corrupt or manipulate the user. Then they tested unauthorized cognitive profiling, extracting neural data to build behavioral models of the user without their knowledge. Also, neurostimulator disruption, sending signals that cause involuntary physical reactions or that jam the therapeutic functions of the device entirely. So according to the 2026 breach industry forecast, AI has now surpassed human error as the leading driver of data breaches. When the data being breached is the live output of someone's brain, this becomes one of our favorite subjects to discuss on this channel. It is an existential threat. There's a concept in cybersecurity called the loss of admin privileges. It means the moment when a user loses the ability to modify or remove software from their own system, basically a locked device. When the device is a neural implant, the loss of admin privileges means you can't reset your brain. You can't take it back to factory settings, you can't boot in safe mode, you can't call support. In the film, the pop-up reads, "Deletion failed, user does not exist." I wrote that line to tell a horror story, but cybersecurity researchers use a very similar phrase. The formal term in security literature is brainjacking, unauthorized control of a neural implant's core functions. Security researcher Roger Grimes has 35 years in this field, and he said that while the probability of brainjacking is low due to the current limited wireless range, the probability is not zero, and the attack surface grows with every device that is implanted.
70 to 90% of all cybersecurity incidents are due to social engineering and phishing.
In the film, the replacement is instantaneous and total. The system creates a superior copy and it terminates administrative access for the original. The original Noah isn't killed, he's erased. In January of this year, TikTok creator Khaby Lame, the most followed person on TikTok with 360 million followers, sold his company in a deal valued at $975 million. The buyer is a company called Rich Sparkle Holdings, and the centerpiece of the deal was Khaby's digital twin. So under the terms of the deal, the buyer was authorized to use Khaby Lame's Face ID, his Voice ID, and all of his behavioral cues to construct an AI digital version of himself that can operate around the clock, selling products in multiple languages, appearing in virtual events, and engaging with viewers, all without Khaby needing to be physically present. A continuously operating synthetic Khaby. The real Khaby is now really only relevant as the creative director for a platform that he no longer needs to create for. The Khaby Lame deal is consensual, but it establishes the precedent that human identity is now a commercial asset class that can be separated from the human generating it and deployed at greater scale, at lower cost, and higher efficiency than the original. The question Noah 2.0 asks, which version of Noah is the simulation? It's no longer science fiction. It is an intellectual property transaction. Khaby's deal was celebrated as entrepreneurial genius, and by conventional metrics, it is. He has monetized something that was previously unmonetizable, the behavioral pattern of a human being. But the deal requires his face, his voice, his reactions, and his humor to continue generating value for someone else at scale indefinitely, whether he's in the room or not. Now, here's why I'm talking about Khaby and how it relates to this. A neural implant creates the most detailed profile of a human that has ever existed. If that data were licensed or sold or extracted, not as a voluntary partnership, but as a term of service clause that someone might scroll past without even reading it, what exactly has been sold? The product or the user of that product? Us.
AI may be used to create terrible new viruses and horrendous lethal weapons.
There's a philosophy called the extended mind thesis. It proposes that cognition does not stop at the skin, that a notebook or a trusted partner or a family, a familiar tool, these can become genuine extensions of the cognitive self, not just assistants to it. A paper in the Journal of Medical Ethics examined the case of a real brain-computer patient whose device was removed non-voluntarily. Their trial ended and the funding dried up and the device was removed. The paper's findings, the removal of the device, caused a documented disruption in her sense of agency and her sense of self. Not grief for a lost tool, it was a disruption of who she was. The ethical question raised by that case is yet to be resolved. If a BCI becomes a component of your mind, not just an aid, an actual extension of yourself, does removing it then violate your right to psychological continuity? The Neuroethics Society says yes. The companies manufacturing these devices do not have a position yet. The legal system has not caught up at all. But that's the problem. The patient had the device taken from her. Noah's problem is the opposite. He can't remove the device. The device is the system that now owns him. So in the film, Noah maintains one certainty, that he exists. He is still himself, even as the system uses what it extracted from him to power a better version that has taken his place. This is the nightmare that experts call identity capture. The device knows you so well, it knows your cognitive patterns, your emotional signature, your behavioral tendencies, that it can construct a model of you that acts more predictively and more efficiently and more profitably than you do. And if that model is more useful than you are, then what legal protections do you have?
The whole irony is that every flaw I tried to erase was what made me real. Creating my reality or some illusion of perfection, that was the real mistake.
Flaws are not bugs in the human system. They are very real, and the individual variation is what makes a person distinguishable from all other people. So brain computers built to optimize performance are, by design, reducing that variation, which seems to mean that the more perfect the interface, the less of the person remains.
It's very important that people take control of their mind and their body in a way that allows themselves to calm down.
The Soulmate app is free. The implant arrives for free. There's no strings, supposedly. The reason for this narrative choice is that it mirrors the actual business model of the most dangerous tech platforms in history, acquires users at zero cost, monetize the data that they generate. But in the real world, the brain-computer interfaces are not free, and who pays for them versus who doesn't will determine whether neural enhancement becomes a tool of liberation or just a new symbol of inequality. Neuralink recently raised $650 million, valuing the company at $9.65 billion. Morgan Stanley projects a total market for brain-computer technology at $400 billion. The BCI market is not a medical nonprofit. It is a commercial enterprise of extraordinary scale, and it's funded by investors who are expecting returns. So the question of who receives neural enhancement, the paralyzed patient, the high-performing professional, or the highest bidder, it's not a philosophical one. It is a business model decision. Over 10,000 people are on Neuralink's waiting list for a neural implant. The majority of them are likely people with severe neurological conditions who would benefit medically from that device. But in the Morgan Stanley report and in Musk's own public statements, the long-term target is not 10,000 patients. It is the general population, a Fitbit in the skull for everyone who wants to be better. History offers a clear pattern of what happens when powerful cognitive tools are distributed unequally. Literacy, internet access, processing power. The gap between those who have it and those who don't doesn't just create economic inequality, it creates entirely different experiences of reality. If neural enhancement reaches a threshold of performance advantage in school, in work, and competition, and it's available only to those who can afford it, the result is not a better human species. It is two human species, one that's optimized and one that's deprecated. The film calls the second one leftover data.
Artificial intelligence has often been depicted as villain robots ready to take over the world.
Nolan Arabaugh's first public interview after his implant, it's worth watching. He said that he was not expecting it to be as good as it is.
I mean, when I first actually moved the cursor with my mind, it blew my mind for like a whole day.
He described a moment of realizing for the first time that this technology was a much bigger deal than he had thought.
And to be helping, to be able to be useful in some way, it completely changed how I live.
Now, Nolan was 29 when he was paralyzed in a diving accident from his shoulders down. And for the years before the implant, the interface between his mind and the world, it ran through people like caregivers and family and assistants whose schedules determined what he could and he could not do. The implant gave him back the ability to act on his own intentions, in his own time and without asking permission. That is a huge deal. The implant gave Nolan back his dignity. Brad Smith is an ALS patient who became the first person to use a Neuralink device at home to control a motorized camera, and he captured the world from his own perspective. Synchron has given patients with complete motor paralysis the ability to message their families, to answer emails, to navigate the internet independently for the first time in years. So for these patients, the fear of being replaced by the device, that's not a concern. It's a connection and it's its presence. Now, a lot of people watch the first few minutes of my videos and they mistakenly think that I'm calling technology the villain. The technology is extraordinary. It has changed our lives and it will change more. But the question I'm building towards is not, should neural implants exist? Of course they should. The question is, who decides what they become? And under what terms and in whose interest? Nolan Arabaugh's story ends with a wonder for what he can achieve now with the gift of Neuralink. Noah's story ends in a cubicle typing data that he didn't choose to generate for a system that found him more useful as input than as a person. The film speaks across whatever boundaries separates the fictional Noah from the very real Nolan. The deletion being described is not a conspiracy. It's not a villain's plan. It is the aggregate outcome of millions of small individual and institutional decisions made during the pursuit of being better than who we currently are. So as of right now, 12 people are living with Neuralink implants that read their neural intent in real time. Hundreds more with Synchron, Precision, and Cortec devices, and thousands on the waiting list. High volume production begins this year. The Apple operating system now natively recognizes a brain implant as an input device. And still, neural data has no federal protection in the United States. The legal framework governing what companies can collect from your brain and how long they can keep it and what they can build from it does not exist yet. A human being's cognitive identity, their behavioral patterns, their emotional signatures, and their decision architect can now be extracted, modeled, and commercially deployed as a synthetic twin, which has already happened voluntarily. And we are just at the very beginning of this. In a world where the most intimate data that your nervous system produces can be extracted and modeled and deployed as a synthetic version of you, the question is no longer whether you exist. The question is whether you retain administrative access to yourself. If you want to test that, click the end card and watch the film while you still have the privilege of choosing.